Hello all and welcome back to the Fin to the Woods podcast with me, Finian Hackett. I've had a lovely week and a half since our last episode. I have been up to the Lake District for a few days to see my friend. We had a wonderful time. The weather wasn't so kind to us. We were climbing up a mountain it was just a very large hill, really, and it was absolutely chucking it down and it was so windy. We literally had to climb up rock faces. It was intense but enjoyable and a memory I shall never forget. And the next day the weather was fine. So, I've also been doing lots of cleaning and tidying, moving out my house. Hence why I'm quite bunged up, because I think there's quite a lot of dust that's been unsettled in my house. So I do apologise for that, although I do speak quite nasally anyway, so it's not really that different to usual. And also, we've had a general election here in the UK, which is quite a big thing, especially for me. This is my first time I was able to vote in a general election, and also the first time now that the government has completely changed in my lifetime. I've had, well, not in my lifetime, but now I'm more politically aware, let's say. I've had 14 years under a Tory government here in the UK, and now it's gone to Labour. It's going to be interesting to see what that does to the country, how that changes certain things, how that won't change at all certain areas, how it's going to affect the arts sector and the arts industry, hopefully in a good way, fingers crossed, but you never know with these things, because a lot of the time they say things and then don't do them, or they say one thing and then do something else, and I mean, it'll be an interesting time for the country, I think. Positive and negative in some ways, but I think it's going to be an interesting change of affairs here in the UK. So it's been quite a busy week in regards to politics, both here in the UK and in France as well. That was all a bit dramatic. However, the world of theatre, once more, is keeping us all light and airy and giving us something to enjoy and look forward to and kind of escape all the political drama that's always going on all around the world. And for me, the show that I saw that has done that, lifted my woes about life, was Hello Dolly at the London Palladium. This revival of Hello Dolly, directed by Dominic Cooke, was meant to open at the Adelphi Theatre in August 2020. But then COVID happened and it was cancelled, and it was delayed and delayed. We never really heard anything about it. And obviously the star, Dame Imelda Staunton, was a bit busy filming The Crown, so it all kind of disappeared. And there were times when I thought we were never going to hear of it again, it was never going to happen, and it was just going to be a casualty of COVID. However, it's finally returned to the West End, this time at the London Palladium, because the Adelphi is a bit busy with the very successful Back to the Future. And I'm very, very glad that that change has happened, because after seeing it, I don't know how they were going to do it in the Adelphi compared to how they would have done it at the London Palladium. Very different venues, very different sizes, just very different spaces. So I'm glad in some ways that it didn't happen in 2020, because we've got it at the London Palladium. Of all the venues, it's a marvellous place for a Hello Dolly revival. And as I said, it stars Dame Imelda Staunton, newly appointed Dame Imelda Staunton. And I was sceptical about this revival because Dolly isn't done that often here in the UK. The last big West End revival was in 1984, starring Danny LaRue, and the last big London revival was in 2009 at the Regent's Park Open Air Theatre with Samantha Spiro as Dolly. She won an Olivier for that. But apart from that, it's not been done very often since then, compared to in America, where it's done fairly regularly. Hello Dolly has always been a very popular show, and I think that's in part due to the film starring Barbra Streisand, which was very popular. She was horrendously miscast in that film, but was horrendously good as well. I love her in that movie. She's completely wrong, but also completely right. I don't know, it doesn't really work, but it does. And I think that led to the show's popularity a little bit more, especially over here. But it has just been a popular show, and it's run for years and years and done many tours, and it's always done in a very similar style. You always have Dolly in her red dress when she does Harmonia Gardens. It always has very similar direction, very similar choreography, just very similar aesthetic to it. And it's great when a revival goes off-piste and does a version of the show that people might not be expecting, and those expectations that people already have for the show are kind of blown out of the water. I was very confident in Imelda Staunton's ability to play this part. Some people weren't. Some people were thinking that she'd be too harsh, too horrible, because she is quite well known for playing quite harsh characters, especially within the world of musical theatre. Think Mrs. Lovett, think Sally in Follies, think Rose in Gypsy. Quite heavy-going, quite heavy-handed parts. Dolly is heavy-handed, but with an ounce of comedy on the side. I was blown away by Imelda Staunton's performance. I thought she was so witty and so charismatic as Dolly, and so her acting choices were just so clever and subtle. And I was sat in the front row with my lovely friend Kiana. We had a wonderful evening, so we could really see the facial expressions and all the details in the performance. The laughs were great for us because we were seeing it straight and we could see every detail. But those tiny little movements and little things that she did to get the laughs read all the way up to the grand circle. And I think that's ridiculously impressive. If we could see those details there and we were laughing at them, I'm amazed that they could see them up in the grand circle. But that's just good acting, direction, body language, everything. And I think she had it all. I was so impressed. And pleasantly surprised and wasn't disappointed in any way. I thought it was a marvellous performance from her, and my favourite thing I've seen her do. I saw her as Sally in Follies. I think she was maybe slightly miscast in that role. I think it wasn't really meant for her. I think she was good as Rose in Gypsy, but again, I just love Dolly as a character, and I think she hit the nail on the head every single time. You had a terrific supporting cast around her, and I say supporting because without the other principals in the show, Dolly as a character doesn't really work, and they really did delve into Dolly's grief a little bit more. They didn't make it depressing, but there were just certain elements that were a bit more emotional than in other versions that I've seen. And to get to that point and to be comfortable with the other principals is so important for Dolly as a character. And Jenna Russell as Irene Malloy was my standout, I think, of the principals. I love her as a performer anyway, and I like Irene Malloy as a character. When I saw Kate Baldwin do it on Broadway, I thought she was top-notch, and I thought she really got the feistiness of Irene Malloy. She didn't feel like a wet lettuce, which I think Irene Malloy could be if directed badly and performed badly. But I also think Jenna Russell did a great interpretation of Irene Malloy, similar to Kate Baldwin's. She was feisty, she took no shit, and you liked her, you warmed to her, and she sung beautifully, and I just thought she was, for me, the other really particular standout amongst the principals. But my God, they were all so strong, each and every one of them, and that's very, very rare that I think that. Very rare. A lot of the energy for the production came from the reorchestration of it. They used a lot of the orchestrations from the film version of Dolly, and these were funked up, spruced up for Barbra Streisand because she was a singer and she could do a bit more with the songs than Carol Channing might have done, or Mary Martin, or whoever played it prior. And that was a big draw for me for this revival because I love those orchestrations in the film and they add so much energy to the character. And if anyone's going to bring energy to those songs that isn't Barbra Streisand, it's Imelda Staunton. One of the biggest changes is the opening sequence, where instead of going from Cool on Dolly into I Put My Hand In, it opens straight away with Just Leave Everything to Me, which was written for the film for Barbra Streisand, and this is the first time ever it's been featured in the musical on stage, with permission from Jerry Herman. Imelda Staunton and Jerry Herman discussed it, and it was one of his last decisions he made before he passed away a few years ago, which I think is a really lovely thing that it had his blessing. And it was a brilliant idea to change it. It adds so much more energy to the opening of the show. It's punchy, it's impactful, it makes you like Dolly from the off. It's a much better song than I Put My Hand In. I've always disliked that song, and a brilliant decision, and I'm glad they did it. Before the parade passes by, Put On Your Sunday Clothes and the title number, Hello Dolly, were all using some of the film orchestrations as well. Again, a brilliant choice, adds a bit of energised just kind of drive behind all the numbers and picks up the pace, as well as So Long Dearie, her kind of 11 o'clock number. it's often done quite slow, and for the film, Babs went, no, I want it faster, and it was quite pacey, and that's the version that Imelda did, and it just drives the whole show. We were out by 10:05. There were also a couple of additions that weren't from the film. You had Penny in My Pocket, which was a song that was in the out-of-town tryouts for Hello Dolly back in the 60s, but then was cut due to time constraints, and wasn't seen again until the 2017 Broadway revival when David Hyde Pierce did it. They've put it in for this production at the beginning of Act 2. It doesn't do a lot for me, it doesn't add anything to the story. I don't know if it's just to give Horace something else to sing in the show, because he doesn't sing a lot. It just felt unnecessary. It felt like a song that they could have done without, and it kind of was a less impactful beginning of Act 2 than opening with Elegance could have been. I don't know, I wasn't sold on it. Performed very well by Andy Nyman, I liked his portrayal of Horace, but yeah, that song, cut it. You also had Love Look in My Window added into the score, which was written for Ethel Merman when she took over the role of Dolly in the original run. And again, this hasn't really been seen since, and it's been added in to Act 2 before Dolly goes into the Harmonia Gardens to do Hello Dolly, and it worked really nicely. They did it in her little bedroom with her husband's photo on her mirror as she's getting ready to go to grace the Harmonia Gardens with her presence once again, and it was a really touching and lovely moment, and it adds another layer to Dolly's character and the grief that she's going through and the sign that she's looking for from her dead husband, that she wants love and she wants to love again and she wants to find someone else, and it won't be the same as her marriage with him, but it will still be a marriage of love, and that's what she wants. It's not a revival for Hello Dolly purists. As I say, they've changed the score a little bit. They've changed bits of the script as well, just moved a few bits around, nothing too drastic. I really liked any of the changes anyway. I thought they sounded and worked very well. Also, she doesn't wear the red dress for the number Hello Dolly, the staple kind of image of the show. She's in green, a lovely green dress, and it works very well with the gold colour scheme that they've got going on with the big staircase that comes on. She also doesn't wear a white gown at the end of the show. She wears the iconic red dress then, but also all the principals are kind of in colourful outfits then. It works quite well. I don't really care about that kind of thing unless it affects the storyline. I don't think it affects the storyline. I think it's just that's what people are used to, and people don't like it sometimes when those things change. I think it's important when you're revitalising a musical that you don't just stick to the given pattern. Think outside the box, change the colours a bit, because it makes it that much more exciting to watch. The cast and the band were huge. It was a cast of, I think, 36, and the band, I think, is 22-piece, which is crazy in this day and age. You don't have casts or orchestras that size anymore at all, and they sounded amazing. And on the Palladium stage, you need a big cast to fill that space. I remember seeing something there a few years ago and thinking, my god, this looks so sparse on this vast stage, and when you fill it with people it works really well, and I was just really glad to see a company that big on the Palladium. The set was also really interesting and different, and again, not your traditional Hello Dolly set, not in a way that it was modern or completely against the grain. It was just a reinterpretation of the settings of each scene, which I really liked. There was a big LED screen at the back, and I can feel the eye rolls even as I'm recording this, but I actually thought it was used very well, and I'm not a big fan of them. I hate an LED screen, but it was used so subtly. It wasn't used as a backdrop really, it was just the sky and the skyline, and it worked kind of in conjunction with, they had a travelator across the width of the stage, which they used a lot in numbers and in scenes, and when they were walking on that, the background of the LED screen would also move, same when the big steam train chuffed along the Palladium stage. That was epic. Also the tram, and also when there was a scene change. So that LED screen and the projections and everything worked really nicely and didn't feel like it was too invasive on the production, which I was a big fan of. As I said, you had a train, you had a tram, travelator, a big golden staircase for Hello Dolly, which was lovely. I loved the hat shop set, I loved the hay and feed shop set. I thought it was really lovely, really simple, but also some really elegant set pieces as well. Also, I loved the hats and the wigs. They were a big standout for me. The wigs were some of the best I've seen in recent years. They were so detailed and intricate, and sitting in that front row, you see every single detail on everyone's costume and stuff. So it was really lovely to sit that close. I never sit in a front row, but they were only 20 quid, and they said they were a restricted view, and I thought, oh my god, I'm going to be looking up Imelda Staunton's skirt, but I was not, which was very pleasant news for me. It was a great view, and I think it's one of the best bargains in the West End at the moment. I didn't have to really strain my neck. You missed minimal amounts of the show, barely anything. And yeah, so if you get a chance to go and see it, try and book those seats. I think they might only be for under 25s, but have a look, because I'm not too sure, but it's worth it. It's worth it sitting in that front row. I'm going again in a few weeks' time, and obviously it's only in previews now, so it will improve and things will change. There were moments where you could see Imelda wasn't quite sure where she was coming in for the music. There were moments where some lines weren't quite there. A few gags didn't kind of, not land, but prop gags didn't work in the ways that they should do, but they'll all be ironed out in the next couple of weeks. It will, by the time I see it in the middle of August, be so smooth and wonderful, and it already was, but it'll be even better by then. So if you get the chance, do go and see it. It's a brilliant revival, really clever, some brilliant performances, and I think it's helped breathe new life into Dolly, and I'm excited to see the reaction for the rest of the run. Right, let's move on from Dolly, because I will just keep on talking about it for hours and hours, and no one wants to hear that. So let's talk about some of the theatre bits and bobs that have been going on recently, and let's talk about Ian McKellen once more. He has now completely dropped out of the production of The Players' Kings. As you may know, and I think I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, he had a fall during one of the performances while the play was in London. Then he had to pull out of the rest of the London run, which was only about 3 shows. He then said he was going to return to do the rest of the UK tour, but he's now pulled out of it completely and will no longer be doing the dates in Bristol, Birmingham, Norwich and Newcastle. I feel bad for Ian McKellen. I think this fall has probably injured him more than he's letting off and more than we're being told, because at first it was that he was only missing 1 show in the West End and he was going to do the final 2. Then it's gradually got more and more shows that he's missing, and now he's pulled out completely. He is 85, so I understand it, but I think it's probably more serious than maybe we're being told it is. Some woman is now not suing him, but she's complained to the BBC that she got landed on by Ian McKellen and no one helped her and this, that and the other, so that's all going to probably blow up soon as well. But I do wish Ian McKellen well, and I think it's a really sad situation and really, really unfortunate. I don't know why that prop was there that he fell over anyway. I don't know if it was a prop or part of the set. It's all a bit convoluted. I don't think anyone's particularly sure on what actually happened, because there's multiple stories from multiple people. However, let's hope he gets better. Another big story from this week is all to do with James Corden. Now, I'm not James Corden's biggest fan with regards to his acting or anything he does. I don't watch a lot of the things he does. However, in this situation, I'm on his side, and that's controversial for a lot of people, but I am. So he is currently starring in the play The Constituent with Anna Maxwell Martin at the Old Vic in London. And on the day of a performance last week, I'm not quite sure because I don't keep up with sport, there was an England football match. I think it was against Switzerland, I want to say. I may be wrong. I'm going to go and fact check. Hang on. It was Switzerland. I'm very impressed with myself. I didn't know that I knew that. But anyway, they had gone to penalties for some reason. I think the match had started at about 5 and it was still going on. Don't know why, but it was. And James Corden came out into the auditorium just as the show was about to start with his iPad, which was playing the match, and went, let's all watch the penalties together, because he was like, I need to watch them before I start the show. And apparently lots of people in the audience were already watching it on their phones, and no one was really getting ready for the show to begin. So then he brought his iPad out, everyone watched it all together and cheered along. Anna Maxwell Martin was also out there cheering along and getting involved. It was delayed by 7 minutes, I think, the start of the production, and that was it. But there's been a lot of uproar about this, saying it was unprofessional and horrible and he shouldn't have done this and it distracts from theatre, people have trains to catch, blah, 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 blah. I think it's very bizarre that people are getting so hit up about it, and I think it's mainly because it's James Corden. People have a vendetta against him. People don't like what he does, so he did that, and people are up in arms about it. But no one's mentioned the fact that Anna Maxwell Martin, a very respected actress that lots of people like, was also there cheering in the back of the video. If you watch it, you can see her clapping and cheering and getting really involved. So it annoys me that the blame's only been put on him when lots of people were involved. He clearly got permission from the stage crew because they were also visible. It's all kind of been blown out of proportions. If Imelda Staunton had done that at Hello Dolly, no one would have batted an eyelid because it would have been iconic, it would have been camp, it would have been wonderful. So I do think he's getting a bit of unnecessary criticism, and also it's such a unique experience for whoever's gone to see the play that night, and I've seen people who were in the auditorium that night saying what a marvellous experience it was and how interesting it was to see the actors like that before quite a serious play at the Old Vic. So I think it's quite a unique situation, and one that James Corden, for once am on your side, and I think you shouldn't be getting as much stick for this as you currently are. Also, I'd just like to add that the play is only 90 minutes long, so the play was down by 9:10. Anyway, if it was a 3-hour Chekhov, I'd understand the frustration, but it really wasn't. The upkeep, restoration and just general looking after of theatres up and down the country is something that I'm really passionate about, thanks to what my parents do, but also just something that I find really interesting. And this has been a subject that has always interested me. I think it's so important that these historic venues are saved from demolition, redevelopment, whatever it's going to be, because they harvest the next generation of theatre professionals. They are so important to local communities, so I am always behind these theatres and always will be. And the Oldham Coliseum is a great example of one of these venues. Last year lost its Arts Council funding and thanks to that had to close very promptly. And after campaigning by locals over the last year and a bit, led by Julie Hesmanhage from Coronation Street, it has been saved, and it's going to get a £10 million refurbishment, and it's going to be open in time for Christmas 2025. This is such great news. I think there was such a big uproar about the closure of the venue that I think something was going to have to happen, because they were planning, I think, to knock down the building and build a smaller theatre in its place. But this building was built in 1885. There is a wealth of history in this building, and the money should be spent, instead of on building a new building, on the existing building and renovating it and making sure that more audiences get to spend time in such a historic venue. So I am so happy that that has happened, and I think it's so important. On the flip side, the 900-seat Doncaster Grand has gone up for auction. So this theatre actually closed in 1995, so nearly 30 years ago, and it's fallen completely derelict. It's been on the Theatres Trust list of theatres at risk for years, I think since the list's inception in about 20 years ago. And it was a bingo hall from the 60s until the 90s, so it hasn't been a theatre per se since the early 1960s, but it's still sat there. Just this 900-seat theatre is sat there falling apart, and now it's gone up for auction. It's not clear what not the legalities, but what buying it would entail. Would you have to keep it open as a theatre, or could you just knock it down? Could it be turned into housing? I'm not too sure. However, I think the auction's in a couple of weeks, or at the end of this week, I think, so we'll be able to find out quite soon what the plans are with that. Hopefully they'll turn it back into a theatre, because again, it's a really old venue and I don't want all that history to be lost to flats or be knocked down and they build a car park or something. I think that would be such a shame. So fingers crossed that gets bought by a company who's going to do some wonderful things for the arts community with that old theatre. You also have the Churchill Theatre in Bromley, which has just been put up for sale on Rightmove. Literally on Rightmove, where you can buy a house, you can buy the Churchill Theatre in Bromley. It's a 13-storey building, and I think it had a library in it, or has a library in it, that's being moved to a different site in Bromley, but the whole building is for sale. It doesn't say what price. It says, I think it's POA or whatever it is, it says on a Rightmove property, which doesn't have a price. You have to contact them to see. I mean, I'd love to buy it. Who wouldn't want to own a theatre? But it will be a lot of money, and I think it needs some work done to it. And it also has existing leases on the venue. I think Trafalgar Entertainment are running the Churchill Theatre currently, and their lease hasn't run out yet. So it'll be interesting to see as well what happens with that. But hopefully, again, it isn't brought by someone who's just going to knock it down, because that theatre gets a lot of tours and it's quite a prominent theatre. So fingers crossed again, nothing bad happens to that. Talking of Bromley, it's been the centre of a bit of drama with regards to the tour of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang here in the UK. When the tour was moving from Bromley to Milton Keynes, apparently some intricate mechanisms inside the very impressive Chitty car were damaged, and this has meant they had to cancel the week-long run in Milton Keynes to fix the car, which is not good because it's quite integral to the storyline. So without the car, you can't really do the show. So I feel really bad for everyone involved, because that is just pure bad luck. I don't know how it got damaged, because surely it's been from venue to venue already. So either it wasn't strapped in properly, or they hit a speed bump or a pothole, or who knows. But that is what's currently happening. And after they cancelled Milton Keynes, they've also cancelled Bradford. So that's 2 weeks of the show that's had to be rescheduled for later on in the year. But yeah, let's hope the Chitty car gets fixed, because, as I say, it's quite integral to the plot and the show in general. The UK tour of the stage adaptation of Bill Bryson's book Notes from a Small Island has been completely cancelled, and this is happening fairly regularly at the moment. It seems that tours aren't either finishing their full run or are cancelling before they even begin. And it was meant to star Les Dennis, and it was going to start in January, and it was a fairly extensive tour, and now it's been completely pulled. And they didn't really give an explanation. They just said it's unable to proceed. I don't know if that's down to money or producers or lack of ticket sales, but the tour isn't meant to be opening till January in 5 months' time. So it's very odd to pull a tour this early, but clearly something else has gone on behind the scenes. But again, sad for all the people who were cast in that, all the crew, everyone involved. No one wants their show to be pulled, especially 5 months before you've even started it. However, it's not all doom and gloom in the world of UK theatre. The Starlight Express revival at the Troubadour Wembley Park is proving to be a bit of a success. It had very good reviews, and it has now extended until June 2025, which is a very big extension. I'm actually very excited to go and see this. I don't know the show at all. I don't really know anything about it. I know it's about trains. I know it's a bit bizarre, and I know some people love it, some people hate it, but that's the same with most Andrew Lloyd Webber shows, let's be honest. And yeah, I'm really excited to go and see it, because it's clearly something that people are enjoying, and everyone who I know who has been to see it has said it's just fun. And a lot of the time, that's what I want from a show. It's fun, it's a bit camp, you don't really have to think much. Sometimes that's all I need. I don't always want to go and see Next to Normal. I sometimes might want to see a bit of Starlight Express. Andrew Lloyd Webber has also stated his plans to possibly move the production up north, because apparently the Troubadour Wembley Park is in an area of redevelopment. They're doing a lot of building in that area of London, and the theatre might fall victim to that, because it was a television studio and they've converted it into a theatre. And it was never really meant to be a theatre venue. I don't particularly like it very much. I always think the sound quality is a bit naff in that venue. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what comes of the theatre. However, he said that if that time comes that they are no longer in the venue, he would quite like to move it up north. And I guess because it is just in an arena, they could just build an arena in a field or something, or use something from an industrial estate and put the show in it. I don't think it's a bad idea, and I think it'll be quite good to spread the Starlight love all the way across the country. Let's move over to the United States. There's been a lot of UK news this week, so let's move over to the US to see what's going on over there. So this new revival of Once Upon a Mattress, which premiered at Encores earlier this year, had already announced that Sutton Foster and Michael Urie would be going with the production to Broadway later this month, and now they've announced the rest of the principal cast. So also returning from the Encores production is Nikki Renee Daniels as Lady Larkin and David Patrick Kelly as King Sextimus. And new to the cast, you've got Anna Gasteyer as Queen Agravain, Will Chase as Sir Harry, Daniel Breaker as the Jester, and Brooks Ashmanskas as the Wizard. I've said before on here how excited I am that Once Upon a Mattress is getting another go at Broadway, and this principal cast is so strong. You've got Tony nominees, Tony winners, the lot, and I think it's a really strong company of people to help re-energise this show and make it good for current audiences, and hopefully it is a hit and hopefully it works out well, because I just hope it does. I think it deserves another shot at being a success. It will introduce it to modern audiences, which again I'm always a big fan of, especially these older musicals pre-1975, getting these wonderful revivals which reintroduce these classic musicals to younger people. It's so important in keeping musical theatre alive. And with my eventual career, it's something that I really want to be a part of. I really want to do some wonderful musical revivals of some wonderful classics and make them popular once more with younger people. And yeah, so good luck, Once Upon a Mattress. I'm rooting for you. Again, I've spoken before about this subject, which is the new Dolly Parton musical, Hello, I'm Dolly, which is going to bow on Broadway in a few years' time, and they hadn't had anyone attached to it, but now they've announced the director who is linked to the workshops and the production, and it's Bartlett Sher, who is a Tony-winning director whose work I really enjoy. He recently did the revival of Kiss Me Kate at the Barbican, which is currently playing at time of recording, and he has also done the Broadway revivals of South Pacific, My Fair Lady, The King and I, Camelot. He also did To Kill a Mockingbird recently. He's a very good director and very well respected, and I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to do with this, because this is not like anything that he really does. He does quite heavy-going shows or quite classic shows. He very rarely does anything like this new jukebox musical hybrid that is Hello, I'm Dolly. So I'm really intrigued why he's involved and what he's going to bring to this, because I think it's an interesting partnership to say the least. But it'll be exciting. It's always exciting when you get a director involved who isn't necessarily your particular vision for said production, because he might be bringing in some brilliant ideas. But yeah, I thought that was quite a little bit of exciting news. The latest bunch of Theatre Hall of Fame inductees has been announced this week, and they are as follows: Elizabeth Ashley, Boyd Gaines, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Donna Murphy, Charles Bush, William Finn, David Rabe, and Todd Hames. Todd Hames was the artistic director of the Roundabout Theatre Company, and he sadly passed away last year, so it's a very lovely honour to give to him. But I want to be in the Theatre Hall of Fame one day. Not now, obviously, but one day I want to be in the Theatre Hall of Fame. I wonder what criteria you have to hit to be considered good enough to be in it, because how is Donna Murphy not already in the Theatre Hall of Fame? How's William Finn, the composer of falsettos, not already in the Theatre Hall of Fame? How's Todd Hames not already in the Theatre Hall of Fame? Very interesting that they weren't already included, but I don't know the criteria to get your foot in the door. But one day you'll see my name in there, I promise you. A small bit of movie musical news for you as well, and this regards Beautiful, the Carole King musical. So the rights to adapt the musical, Beautiful, into a movie were bought back in, I think, 2015. It's been quite a while. It then went silent for a long, long time, and then a couple of years ago it was announced that Daisy Edgar-Jones had been cast as Carole King, and it was all moving forward. And now, in a recent interview, Daisy Edgar-Jones has stated she will no longer be playing Carole King, and that the film is no longer happening. That's kind of what her wording insinuated. Whether that has been confirmed or not, I'm not too sure. But apparently it's no longer happening. According to her, the script needs some more time in the oven. That's what she said. But I think it's a shame, because I really enjoyed the show when I saw it. I don't know how well it would translate to the big screen, because I guess it's just like any other biopic, isn't it? It's no different. And I think also Carole King's had a very interesting life. I think it would make for an interesting film. But a shame that after all those years it might not even be happening at all. That's a bit shit, to be honest. And I also need to give you an update on the drama at Sunset Boulevard in Australia. So as I've spoken about quite extensively, Sarah Brightman is currently playing Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard in Australia, and it's been a bit tumultuous. The reviews haven't been great, it hasn't been selling well, they've cut down on performances, it's been a bit of a shambles, and now Sarah Brightman had a calf injury and has had to miss 2 weeks of performances. This was... Oh, it's just a mess, isn't it? It's just all over the place. I just can't... it must be so stressful there. Because apparently she said that she had this injury, pulled out, and then no one would confirm when she was returning to the production. It was all a bit up in the air. And then she suddenly went, oh, I'm returning tomorrow. And now she's returned, apparently. But she had a calf injury. I don't know how you get a calf injury, especially playing Norma Desmond. All she does is walk down some stairs, but... You know, maybe that's when she did it. But yeah, just another layer of drama going on at the Aussie production of Sunset Boulevard. Let's round off, as ever, with a little bit of casting news, specifically this week about Les Mis, the International Arena Tour. So it's already been announced that the likes of Michael Ball, Alfie Boe, Bradley Jaden will all be starring in the tour, but they've announced a few more of the principals, and these include Gavin Lee as Thénardier, Jack Yarrow as Marius, and Bonnie Langford as Madame Thénardier. I'm so ready to see Bonnie Langford as Madame Thénardier. I'm not the biggest Les Mis fan, but I will go to see it just because it's her. I love Bonnie Langford. She's an icon. Love her. And lots of people do. She's such a popular person amongst musical theatre people. I think it's great. I think she's marvellous. I think the interesting thing here, though, is Jack Yarrow and Bonnie are playing the roles that they're playing on the Arena Tour later this year in the West End for 4 weeks. Just for 4 weeks. Starting next week. They've been rehearsing, apparently, and they're going in, I think, as holiday cover, basically, for 4 weeks over July and August, and then leaving again. Which I don't think I've ever seen happen, apart from when Ashley Roberts went into Waitress for a very odd amount of time. And that was all a bit bizarre. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So they announced their casting in the international tour, and then about 2 days later they announced that actually they're doing a quick month in the West End first, which I think is quite iconic. My Fin to the Woods vaguely fun fact this week, of course, had to link in to Hello Dolly. And it's the fact that Jerry Herman did not write the whole score of Hello Dolly, contrary to popular belief. David Merrick, who produced the show, the original production, hired Bob Merrill, who is a composer, lyricist, most famous for his work as the lyricist on Funny Girl, to write some additional songs for the show. He wrote Motherhood March, Elegance, and also some additional bits to It Takes a Woman, all songs that are featured in this recent West End revival. He didn't take any credit, no billing or anything, and so the score and those songs in particular are still credited as being Jerry Herman's songs, but Jerry Herman did not write them, Bob Merrill did. Thank you once again for listening to the Fin to the Woods podcast. Make sure to share the podcast, give me a rating on Apple Music or Spotify, email me at fintothewoods@gmail.com if you want anything covered on the podcast, and once again I will talk to you next week.